Hi, everybody. You've reached EDU Diva, also known as Dr. Jackson. I'm here to give you the real deal on a lot of the reality TV shows. I'm going to give you some insight into things that are going on in today's world, give you some insight onto real estate, education, all those types of things. But what I do enjoy doing is watching reality TV shows. So why not give you guys some insight into my thoughts on certain shows that I watch? And one of those is The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. So with The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, we're on season 6, episode 4, and they have been doing the thing. When I tell you that they have been exceeding my expectations season after season, they have been doing that. They're one of my top 3 franchises along with Atlanta. So they must be really doing a good job if they're in my top 3 when there's so many other franchises out there. But they are top tier for me. My faves, and one of the ones that I'm always going to mention, of course, is Mary. I love me some Angie too. But those are my top 2 faves as it pertains to Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. So let's go ahead and get into it. You're going to see me probably looking kind of to the side because I have my notes. I'm not at that point yet where I have everything memorized with everybody and being able to come on here and actually give you guys an explanation off the top of my dome. So, forgive me for that. But we start off with basically brunch, and Lisa's basically having a brunch. And at the brunch, we know from last episode, the brunch was being held basically with everybody that's on this season. And she basically came into the brunch wanting to discuss all of the cases that were mentioned in the prior episodes that were dismissed, or at least she has dismissed written in red letters all across these big blown up pictures around the room. And so now we're at the scene where at the end they're arguing. Bronwyn is arguing with her. Whitney is arguing with her. I mean, there's just a lot of arguing going on, but we're kind of at the tail end of the conversation. And so Bronwyn basically says, you're always throwing insults. I mean, these insults are always coming out. No one can basically say anything about you, but it's okay for you to say things about other people. And basically she's saying it's not equitable. It's not fair, which I agree. And then Whitney walks away because she's like, I can't deal with this anymore. It's too much. And so as Whitney's walking away, she says basically in the confessionals that Lisa should be listening, and that Lisa basically is acting like a toddler, and she's in a position where she does not need to be doing this crap. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, she's doing too much. No one can ever say anything to her. So, she's in the wrong. Basically, that's what she's saying. Now, Lisa starts talking to Angie about how Angie in the prior episode, how it was mentioned to her, to Lisa, that Angie had stated that she's a comparison to Jen Shaw, basically. And Angie was like, she said, yeah, she basically did say that, but she didn't mean it in that way. She didn't mean it like she was actually doing some of the horrendous things that Jen Shaw did. But Lisa didn't like that. And I'm sure most people wouldn't take kindly to that fact that you were comparing them to a criminal like Jen Shaw, because Jen Shaw, as you guys probably know, or if you don't know, go back and review it. She's in jail basically for committing wire fraud and all that against elderly people and people who weren't capable of truly understanding the depth of the money that she was trying to, the fraudulent activities that she was bestowing upon them. So it was a lot. It was a mess with her. But anyways, Angie basically talks about how she owns these salons. And then Lisa's like, you don't really own these salons. You own like one salon. And Angie was like, well, I own 7. So I don't know what the truth is there. I haven't done any background research to understand, what Angie owns and what she doesn't own. I've always liked Angie, as I mentioned before, but I'm not sure exactly what she owns. Now, Angie gets upset because she's like, you telling me what I own? She says, what about you? Angie gets up and starts going off. And Angie likes to stand up. That's her thing. She likes to stand up. And so as she stands up, she then sits down after a while and says Lisa basically lies and she doesn't know anything about her business. And so this is the thing with Lisa. Lisa likes to spout off a lot of different things because she believes that if you spout off these things, that it sounds good and it's believable. And that doesn't make it true though, but she believes that makes it true by her saying these types of things. And Lisa is not one of my favorites. I'm just going to be honest with you, because I feel like she treats other people like they're beneath her. And I don't care what amount of education you have, what job or company or businesses you own, you should always treat everybody with respect. unless they give it to you back, and that's what you get, that's basically what you're getting back. You're treating people with disrespect and they're giving it to you back. It doesn't make it right, but that's what's happening. And so um, Mary is on the side because Angie said, basically, when Angie had gotten upset, she said, "You do French fries, I do franchises," basically. Because, Lisa is known for liking French fries, like in the Wendy's meals and all that type of stuff, which is funny because she acts like she's so elite. And there's nothing wrong with Wendy's meals, but she tries to act like she's so elite. I do this and I do that so elite. But she does like to go to Wendy's and get her French fries and eats poorly from what we gathered. Now, Angie said, "You eat French fries, I do franchises." And Mary was like, "What? What did she say? What is she talking about French fries?" And then Heather had to break it down and say, "No, this is what she was saying." So it was funny because, Mary has these one-liners, these ad libs that she has, and she always brings comedic timing to everything, even when she's not aware of it. So I just found that to be so funny. I started cracking up laughing. Now, Angie starts talking about how she was supporting Lisa's son with, I believe their product is called Lone Wolf or Great Wolf or something like that. And that Lisa basically is basically talking about how, yeah, you did support him, but she's like, "Well, what do you do for me?" Basically, because I'm supporting your kids line, what are you doing for me? Now, Lisa starts yelling because I guess she gets upset about the fact that she even brought up, children, even though Angie was not doing it negatively. But you know how it goes when you bring up anything related to children, um, even though it's not connected to negativity with the actual child, people get upset, which I do understand, but it's just like they just freak out. So Lisa starts yelling. Meredith say, "That's not nice. That's not nice. That's low." You know how you remember how on R&B Divas, if you guys ever watch R&B Divas, that was the thing that Kiki Wyatt said when Selena Johnson and Nikki Gilbert were getting into it. "That's low." And so Meredith basically said that was low. And she said that that's not nice. And then what Angie said was that she was discussing about having a C-level business, and that wasn't, you don't say that to people. That's basically what she was saying to Angie was saying to Lisa, and then that wasn't right for her to say that. Now, Heather steps in and says for Lisa to go low, that's wrong. And also for Angie to go low, that's wrong also. Both of you guys can be in the wrong. And so one is not better than the other or more wrong than the other. You guys are both doing wrong. Heather is the voice of reason in this situation, even though we know that she's been up Lisa's butt pretty strongly for the past 2 seasons. But we're starting to see some cracks a little bit because Heather is basically making some comments, and usually Lisa doesn't like that type of thing. She's like, "Oh, you're not on my side." That's her thing, is about loyalty, even though she's not necessarily loyal to other people, right? So what happens after that is Lisa starts talking about how sometimes she feels just very vulnerable sometimes, and it's and Mary says, "Well, you don't show it." And then Angie ends up apologizing once Lisa kind of makes that comment. And after she apologizes, Lisa accepts her apology. And then Lisa talks to Heather about the fact that she feels like she can be honest with her, that Heather can be honest with her, and she wants that in their relationship. And Lisa says she acknowledges some of the good things about Bronwyn, but also Lisa, at the very tail end of this particular scene, Lisa calms down, and then she asks for everyone to raise their glass. And she basically says, "To those who love hard and hurt hard," or whatever. So that scene is over with. Then we transition to Meredith and Seth in her shop. She has a jewelry, clothing style boutique that has seemed to do very well, at least from what we gathered in the first couple of seasons. And this is actually the shop that Jen Shaw was in, where her assistant, who was Monica, stole that purse. Y'all remember that? Mm-hmm. And so they're talking about redesigning the shop and adding certain things, another level, whatever it may be, to the actual shop. And, Seth is kind of like a jokester. So he picks up their daughter, who's also there, lifts her up. She's about to hit her head on the ceiling. It was just a scene to really kind of showcase Meredith's family, because you guys realize we haven't been seeing a lot of Meredith lately. in terms of like a big storyline for her. The last storyline I think we had was when she did the bat mitzvah, I believe, which is the female version of the bar mitzvah for males. And then before that may have been like concerns about like her husband and were they together or not, but she hasn't really had any super major storylines like some of the other ladies where she kind of really took the season by force. So she's more just her whole vibe seems like she's a friend of, and she's not a necessity, which I really liked Meredith in the beginning. Out of her and Lisa, Meredith was the one that I really liked, especially because she gravitated towards Mary, and their connection together seemed to be really strong. But as you guys could see over the past like 2 seasons, it kind of seemed like Mary kind of took a step back because she felt like Meredith really didn't have her back 100%. And then that's how her and Angie became closer. And we're going to see some cracks, I guess, in her and Angie next week on the review that we see coming at the end of the episode. I hope that it's nothing too bad. I think I read something that said that they were back okay. But, Mary, even though I know that Mary and Angie are close, Mary can sometimes, flip out real quick if she don't like something, but hopefully they're back on track and everything's good because I really like them being friends together. So Heather and Mary actually meet up at a restaurant. So that was surprising because, kind of the beating that Mary kind of gave Heather and Whitney in the past, even though it was more so Whitney, when Mary would call her little girl. But her and Heather have kind of been like off and on a little bit with their relationship, but it was good seeing them meeting up. They met up at a restaurant, and Mary talked about her and Heather were talking about the tequila, and Heather was talking about how she drank tequila the night before, and Mary said she doesn't drink tequila. She says she doesn't like the taste. It tastes like medicine in hospital. And then they give a flashback to the scene where the first episode of the entire series when Mary and Jen Shah got together, and Jen Shah basically was having a conversation with Mary, and Mary was discussing how I guess she had left or wasn't around her, if you guys remember that, because she smelled like hospital, and that was like the big thing. What is smelling like hospital? And anybody that knows, y'all know what hospital smells like. I'm not saying that Mary was right in her approach, because I think at that time her mother-in-law, somebody was passing, and Jen was back and forth to the hospital, but y'all know what hospital smells like. It does have a different smell. And so they flash back to that. So that was kind of interesting seeing that, and kind of funny going back to that first season. Now Whitney, then they show, move forward to a scene with Whitney, and Whitney is basically, at home with her husband, and they're in this, trying to put her pole back up. I know she had a pole in the previous seasons, but she talks about how everybody used to talk about me when I had my pole. You remember I was a talk of the town because I had that pole, and I had this, I had that. So you were the queen bee of Thoughtlandia, right? And not saying that she's a thought because she has a pole. That's not it. But what I'm saying is she was really, really happy about that. The fact that she was living in her glory days, kind of reliving that in her mind. And then her husband was like, yep, you sure were. Yep. He was agreeing. So I like the fact that they do have a playful relationship with each other, but they're always showing something about the freaky side of them on TV. And that got your husband in trouble the last time, Whitney, but that's interesting that they showed that pole getting put back up. I guess you're going back to the glory days that she had. And then she also talked about the failure of the businesses and how it did take a toll on her, because she remembers the days when she was the talk of the town because of the pole, but then she started opening up business, trying to do other areas of entrepreneurship, and how it didn't really work for her, and they basically discussed that. Now Bronwyn then pulls up to Lisa's lounge, and she's like, oh, when did you open this, basically? And Bronwyn is very eclectic with her outfits, so she basically is gonna put on a number whether you like it or not, right? And she had on some type of 80s gear, because it was like 80s colors and everything, so it was interesting. It was I kind of liked it a little bit. It wasn't like my taste per se, but then when she got inside and they sat on the couches, I guess upstairs in the loft area, she took off the jacket and it looked like just a regular outfit. But I thought it was interesting. Bronwyn is always about pulling together some type of look, like I said, whether you like it or not. Lisa, when they're sitting down, Lisa doesn't know what to say, but she did want to have a chat with Bronwyn, because of course the last conversation they had was at Lisa's brunch, and Lisa apologizes for the damaging things that she said, and her goal was for them to have a one-on-one and not have all this chit chat, basically. in the background and interfering with their conversation. And so Lisa claims that her intention was not to hurt her. Bronwyn says she shared her family issues, the issues of the her daughter's father, the family, the things that she went through with Lisa because of the friendship that they had. And so she felt like Lisa was the one person she could talk to and say those types of things to. Now, she said that they go tit for tat with the comments in terms of them making comments to one another, and she wants that to basically to stop. And Bronwyn talks about how, she said minor things, but Lisa would bring up these, D comments about, what they said in the second episode about Bronwyn being a, what writer and sucker and all that type of stuff. So that was something that, Bronwyn basically mentioned as if saying, I may go low, but you go lower. Rest in peace, Eric Mays. That is a saying that he used to say. Now, she then says that Bronwyn starts talking about how her mom was really hard on her, and some of those things affect her, the way she kind of perceives relationships and does things. They eventually hug it out and say that they're not gonna, go through this again. They're gonna move forward, all that type of things. But we know in the reality TV world, especially in the Housewives world, those things change. Those words aren't always solid. So, pay attention to that, because I guarantee you the way that Lisa acts, she's going to say something or do something again, and Bronwyn is basically going to have to let her have it. Because, Bronwyn is real quick with the comebacks, even though she has lied in the past, but I don't think all her lies are going to... I think the lies she told is not going to affect her just overall. They weren't like numerous lies. So, Now, the next scene, which I was very surprised to see, was Mary and her cousin. Her cousin is called Big Joe. He's been on the show before. They're driving to her church. And I was wondering what was going on with Mary's church, because you never heard anything about her going back in the church and doing any preaching or having service or anything like that. And it actually comes up that it's been 2 years since they've been to the church. So basically the church has been closed for 2 years. Now, we know there were some rumblings of this and of that, parishioners at the church saying certain things. But from what I gather, Mary, continue to do your thing. And I'm glad that you're able to be in a position where you can open it back up. So her and her cousin are basically discussing him being like, the contractor and fixing certain things, and she's like touching the pews and like, oh, how did y'all fix this and that, but y'all didn't fix these pews, so some of the pews are kind of need some fixing, basically. And so that was the thing she was discussing with her cousin, and basically saying, you better be glad basically you're my cousin. He's a cousin, but he's been doing this, it's been taking him a year. Basically, she was trying to say he's been taking too long. Now, they sit down on one of the pews, I guess that's straight, and he asks her how Robert Jr. is doing. She said he's doing better, but they've gotten closer, and now that they've gotten closer, she can tell when certain things are wrong. And so she ended up, so she basically stated that, she's glad that they're closer because she's able to pick out certain signs that she may not have always been able to pick out before. And she talks about when they first came in, though, just to go back for a second, there was a picture of Big Mama, which they had showed before, like in the first season or so, when she had walked by, and there was a picture of her Big Mama, who is her grandmother, and I think the grandmother's husband. And she talks about how Big Mama used to bring her to church and how she loved it. And then it segues into her talking about how her mom did everything to try to take over the church when Big Mama passed, and then the cousin's like agreeing. He's like, yeah, I remember when she came into the church, and she basically was like, it was her church. That's basically how she was presenting it, and how she was up in the, pulpit, and I guess she was directing the choir or something like that. And then they said the police were called, and then they said who was escorted out. Basically, the mama was. And so I guess that's how Mary took over the church, because Mary states that basically the church was supposed to go to her. Like, the grandmother, Big Mama, was like, the churches go to you, but the mama was trying to take over. And then it comes up that the mother passed away like a couple of months ago. Mary starts kind of crying, and she basically states how, basically you can tell she's crying from a place of her having gone through a lot of things, and her mom not really being there and really being the support that she needed, because her mom treated her basically like she was the enemy, I guess, because she was taking over the church and she wanted to have control and power. That's what her and the cousin stated. Now, After that scene, it goes into Angie at her salon. Heather's coming in. I guess Heather's coming in so that way Angie can practice. Angie's cosmetology license has lapsed. So when your cosmetology license has lapsed, and I know this from kind of being in the circles of cosmetology a little bit because my daughter is in went to cosmetology school, and with cosmetology you become licensed just like with real estate. And I'm licensed in real estate. You have to take continuing education credits / classes in order to continue having your license renewed, because they want you to stay up to date on industry standards, safety measures, etc. So she had to practice on Heather because she had to go and do some classes to get her credits in order to be relicensed. Basically, I think she has to, when you let your license lapse, you have to do everything all over again, like your state boards, all of that. So she had Heather so she could practice doing some type of rollers or something. I don't know what type of stuff she was doing because it didn't look right, but I know Angie can do hair, but she it's been mentioned many times, and she's her hair is always on point, so I trust that she can do hair. But I think they were just doing something in terms of just doing some type of style for the show. And what Angie brings up though is that Lisa's assistant actually came in either earlier that day or the day before asking for the products that of her son's products back. And I guess you remember there was like a partnership where Angie was going to sell Lisa's son's products in her store. And the Lisa's assistant showed up saying that she needed to get those products back. And then like right after the assistant left, Lisa sends her a $600 Venmo to, I guess, pay her for her time and suffering for having to have those products. And then she basically like goes off on her and basically tells her she ain't worth nothing and all that kind of stuff. And Angie's like, what did I do? Like, she's talking to Heather like, what did I do? I thought when we left the brunch we were fine. So she's just like, and then she's back reverting to the same old tricks. And so after that scene, then we switch over to Brittany and Whitney. They meet up at some type of plant store. It looked like a nice plant store, places where you can really find some nice things to hang inside and outside the home. And Brittany says that her relationship with Whitney has been very intense, and that she feels bad about it. She apologized. Whitney apologized also. Their goal was to set a foot on the right path. And so after that, they start having a conversation about Jared. Of course, Jared is always coming up. And Brittany and Jared, that's the most delusional relationship I ever heard of. And she is delusional when it comes to this. Now, I like Brittany because Brittany is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And that is perfectly fine with me on this reality show, because she is just at any moment's notice, she's going to say something. She's going to ding, 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 ding. I got an announcement. And it's just too funny. So I don't mind Brittany on the show, but her relationship is just crazy. Now, she says that her and Jared are still together, and that they're working back up to being fiancés again. And she says that Jared is really, really good to her. And even though we know from past discussions and conversations, he has cheated on her many, many times. So if you like it, I love it. But then she starts talking about her daughter. Her daughter's name is Olivia, and how Olivia doesn't really want her to be dating him, or I guess really dating right now. Now, from what we've been told before through Brittany, her and her children do not have a good relationship. She basically has put her relationships of the men she's dated or married above her children. And Olivia is trying to, I guess they've opened up to having a relationship and talking and growing closer as mother and daughter. But she doesn't see it for, I guess, Jared or anybody else right now. She just wants them to have that relationship. And Whitney is basically saying, I didn't have a good relationship with my parents and growing up. And so if there's at any point where your daughter's reaching out to you and asking you, please don't do this because I want us to be in this position, like you've always put other people ahead of me, listen to your daughter, basically, because it may not happen again where she has an open door. And so I really thought that was good advice that Whitney gave her. And I think that Brittany should take heed to that. Now, this is the scene that really got me. Now, we kind of saw some inklings of Bronwyn's mom kind of being ticky, ticky, boom, boom. And what I mean by that, the way she approaches things. So I'm like, if you're talking like this on camera, I can only imagine what you're saying off camera. And so they sit down there on the couch, and Bronwyn's daughter and boyfriend are leaving, talking about they going bowling. She's like, y'all going bowling? Are y'all really going bowling? And then her mom is kind of looking like, I ain't really going bowling. There's stuff to do here at the house. But neither here nor there. Her mom starts talking about how, yeah, you wouldn't have had a boyfriend living in our house. Basically, you wouldn't be moving a boyfriend in, because I think her daughter's around the same age as Bronwyn, when Bronwyn got pregnant with her at 18 or 19, because I believe she just graduated from high school. So um her mom says she's old generation. Basically, she's not new generation type of parent. um and she says that basically the daughter is following Bronwyn's example and kind of how she operates. Her mom says that she basically parents differently, and that's, and her mom says tough love is fine. She believes tough love is fine. You can tell that there's not really a loving kind of connection between Bronwyn and her mom. You don't see them hug. You don't see her mom really smiling. She has a stern look on her face as she's talking to her. You could tell that it's a mask though, but yeah, so they continue on talking, and Bronwyn talks about how her mom did not let her celebrate her pregnancy, which, happens in a lot of families sometimes when you get pregnant, especially with them being of the Mormon faith, having certain ideologies and beliefs that they have. She says that her mom wouldn't let her have a baby shower, none of that. And she even gives an example of how they went to a store and Bronwyn was visibly pregnant, and how her sister was pregnant at the same time, but I'm guessing her sister was older and probably married, and the mother was buying something for the sister. They went up to the counter and she's like, "Oh, you're buying this for your grandbaby?" And then Bron was like, "Yeah, for my sister." And she's like, and I guess the cashier was confused, like, "Oh, aren't you pregnant too?" And she's like, "Yeah, but it's basically, yeah, it's for my sister, not for me," and how that made her feel. And so that's sad to hear that how her mom treated her throughout it. She said basically she was not celebrated at all. And then her mom says that it wasn't her fault that she didn't have a happy pregnancy. And Bronwyn starts crying, and she basically starts going into the fact that you know, what would you have done? You had to drop off basically your daughter. I'm forgetting her daughter's name. You had to drop off your daughter, Gwen. That's her name. Gwen was dropped off in our care. What would you have done basically if we weren't there? She would have had to gone into foster care. Like, her mother had no care in the world. It's like her mom is very cold hearted when it comes to just how she treats her. Now, I think Bronwyn mentioned that she doesn't treat Gwen the same way, but yeah, she has this thing with her, and it's very odd because you would think at this point you would try to be a little bit more open and caring for your daughter, especially because you're living with them. And now your daughter is successful in her own right, and because she is married to someone that is successful also. And you would think you would be a little bit more caring and understanding, especially with the old age you're in. Brahma could put your butt in a home in any second the way you acting. And I wouldn't blame her if she did, because you have no type of ounce of empathy or sincerity in the way you operate. And I know you can't change your personality per se, but I believe you can change the way you treat your children as you get older and realize some of the mistakes that you probably made and how you probably would have done something different or should have done something different. But some people have just certain beliefs that they hold on to it, and they will go to their grave with it. Now, after that section, Meredith is with Angie at the coffee shop, and we know Meredith and Angie haven't had the best relationship. But I believe they never had any. Well, they did have some hectic stuff because, stuff with Sean, and then Meredith supposedly calling Sean gay, all that type of stuff. Now, when they're at the coffee shop, Angie mentions about the assistant picking up the products and how Lisa is, back on her thing with her when she thought that they were good. And then Lisa brings up Angie brings up that Lisa, during the time when Angie and Meredith were on the outs, but Meredith and Lisa were good, that Lisa was calling Angie to say, "Hey, I know you and her aren't good, but so I would do this." I would basically dig up information about her bankruptcy. I would dig up information about her seeing someone. Like, she was giving her insight into, you should do this, you should do that. And then Meredith in the confessional was like, "I'm confused. I don't know if I trust Angie," because she says Angie has lied to her before. I don't remember when Angie has lied to her, but okay. But she says that I'm going to ask Lisa about it. And she tells Angie, I'm going to bring it up to her if she really did say this. And we see in the previews for next week that, it's going to get, the party's going to get started between, looks like, Angie and Lisa again. And then there's going to be some type of issue with Angie and Mary, which I'm trying to understand what could have possibly happened, so that's interesting. But overall, this is my review on The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Hope you enjoyed it. I would like for you, please, because I'm trying to build my channel, to like, comment, and share. Give me some feedback. Tell me what you think. Give me some insight on certain things. And as I continue to grow, I'll add more things, do more things to make sure that I'm giving you basically the real deal. Okay. So I look forward to seeing you guys soon, maybe on another show, maybe on another day. Have a great day. Bye-bye.